On January 15th, 2026, four men stood on the summit of Makalu, the fifth highest mountain on Earth, in winter. It was one of the rarest achievements in modern mountaineering. Makalu had only been climbed once before in winter by Italian Simone Moro and Kazakh climber Denis Urubko in February 2009 without supplemental oxygen. The 2026 ascent was the second winter summit in Makalu's history and the first ever achieved by a commercial expedition using bottled oxygen. By the end of the day, two of the four were gone. Phurba Ongel Sherpa, 44, had fallen 200 meters from above Camp 4 while descending. His body could not be reached. Iranian climber Abolfazl Gozali had vanished from the spot where he had been told to wait. He has not been seen since. The expedition that produced the second winter summit in Makalu's history is now the subject of the most expensive search and rescue failure of the 2026 season, and a question the commercial mountaineering industry has been quietly avoiding for a decade. What happens when a client's paperwork doesn't match what they were carrying? To understand why a successful summit became a financial collapse, you have to look at what the policy in Gozali's pack actually covered, and what it did not. The first winter ascent of Makalu had been one of the great achievements of modern Himalayan mountaineering. Moro and Urubko, climbing without bottled oxygen, summited on February 9, 2009, after 13 failed winter attempts on the mountain over 29 years. They climbed in temperatures of minus 40 degrees Celsius and winds at 120 kilometers per hour. After their summit, no climber attempted Makalu in winter again until 2024. That attempt was Sanu Sherpa's, the only person in history to summit all 14 8,000ers twice, with more than 45 successful 8,000-meter ascents. Sanu had reached a point in his career where only three peaks, Shishapangma, Cho Oyu, and Dhaulagiri, stood between him and a third complete round of the world's highest mountains. He had attempted Makalu the previous winter with the same client, Abolfazl Gozali, and his younger brother Phurba Ongel. They had reached 7,900 meters before high winds turned them around. The 2026 attempt was the second try. Makalu Adventure, a Kathmandu-based outfitter run by Mohan Lamsal, had assembled a team built around the Sherpa brothers. Phurba Ongel had 19 Everest summits plus Lhotse, Manaslu, Annapurna, Cho Oyu, and K2, one of the most accomplished active high-altitude guides in Nepal. Lakpa Rinji Sherpa rounded out the four-man summit team. Gozali, an Iranian mountaineer who had summited Manaslu in 2022 and climbed Lenin Peak 5 times, was the only paying client on the push. On January 15th, the team summited between 8:30 and 10:30 in the morning. The weather had held just long enough. The descent began under a tightening window. Phurba Ongel and Lakpa Rinji were several meters ahead of Sanu and Gozali when, somewhere above 7,500 meters, Sanu heard Lakpa Rinji crying below them. Phurba had fallen. Sanu told Gozali to stay where he was. He climbed back up to help his brother. Phurba Ongel had fallen approximately 200 meters from the main climbing route. By the time Sanu reached the location, his brother was dead. Sanu turned and descended back to where he had told Gozali to wait. Gozali was not there. This is the sequence that matters, because the public version of the story has had it backwards. Phurba Ongel did not die because Gozali went missing. Gozali went missing because Phurba Ongel had already fallen, and Sanu, caught between his brother dying above and his client waiting below, could not be in both places. The chain that produced both losses started with the fall. The disappearance was the second event, not the first. When Sanu and Lakpa Rinji descended to Camp 3, Camp 2, and Base Camp, there was no trace of Gozali at any of them. Mohan Lamsal, the managing director of Makalu Adventure, had asked Gozali for proof of insurance before the expedition began. Gozali had produced documents. Lamsal accepted them, and the climb proceeded. When Gozali went missing on January 15th, Lamsal called the insurance company. Two things came back. First, Gozali had not renewed the premium on the policy he had shown. The document he produced had described coverage that no longer existed. Second, even if the premium had been paid, the policy was valid only on mountains below 6,000 meters. Makalu is 8,485 meters. The coverage that any reasonable person would have assumed Gozali was carrying, high-altitude search and rescue, helicopter evacuation, body recovery, did not exist on January 15th. There was no insurer to call. There was no reimbursement to claim. There was no third party who would absorb the cost of finding him. The cost fell entirely on Makalu Adventure. Mohan Lamsal told Explorers Web that he covered the rescue expenses out of his own pocket. 2 search and rescue attempts were launched. The first reached Camp 3 and turned back in high winds. The second, a week later, deployed a helicopter and 7 Sherpa guides on the ground. They reached Camp 4. They found nothing. On the second attempt, Sanu Sherpa, who had insisted on being part of every search effort despite having just lost his brother, injured his leg and had to be helped back down to base camp. He was airlifted to the hospital alongside the base camp cook, Roshan Badarai, who had become unwell. The remaining surviving Sherpa from the summit team, Lakpa Rinji, had already been evacuated with severe frostbite on his fingers. A second expedition on the mountain, an all-Sherpa team running for Alti Pro Adventures, joined the second search on humanitarian grounds. Alti Pro had already turned back from their own summit attempt due to the same high winds that produced the conditions Phurba and Gozali died in. They were not contracted, not paid by Makalu Adventure, and not formally requested by the Nepalese government. They went up because Sanu Sherpa came to their tent and asked. The total cost of the failed rescue, paid personally by Mohan Lamsal, ran into tens of thousands of dollars in Sherpa wages, oxygen, supplies, and helicopter time. The figure does not include the lost revenue from the canceled Altai Pro Summit push, or the medical costs of treating Sanu, Lakpa, Rinji, and Badarai. For a Kathmandu-based outfitter operating on the margins of an industry that pays its operators a fraction of what foreign clients are charged, that kind of unrecovered expense is not an inconvenience. It is the kind of figure that determines whether the company exists in 2027. The complication that turned a financial problem into an institutional one was that Gozali's family could not be reached. Iran was, in January 2026, in the middle of a months-long political and security crisis. International communications with the country were intermittent. Standard channels for notifying next of kin in the event of a foreign citizen's death, embassies, consulates, foreign ministry liaisons, were either non-functional or actively obstructed. Lamsal contacted the Iranian consul general in Kathmandu. The response, as he reported it to Explorers Web, was direct. They said they couldn't do anything. This is not the standard outcome of a foreign mountaineering death. When a foreign client dies on a Nepalese peak, the foreign embassy is the organization that coordinates with the family, authorizes recovery operations on behalf of the next of kin, and, in many cases, provides emergency funds or facilitates insurance claims. The embassy is the bridge between the mountain and the home country. For Gozali, that bridge did not exist. Makalu Adventure was forced to route communication with Gozali's family through the Indian embassy in Kathmandu, which agreed to help. The arrangement was not standard, and it was not fast. Days passed before Lamsal had any confirmation that Gozali's family had been notified at all. The systemic point is not that Iran failed Gozali. It is that the commercial mountaineering economy in Nepal operates on the assumption that a foreign government will be available when needed to help close out an incident. When that assumption fails, for political reasons, for economic reasons, for any reason at all, the entire weight of the incident falls on a Kathmandu outfitter who is already operating without the safety net of insurance the client was supposed to have provided. The bridge between the mountain and the home country is, in practice, the insurance policy. When the policy doesn't exist and the consulate isn't picking up, the local outfitter is the only entity left. That is the entity that pays. Phurba Ongel Sherpa was born on July 30th, 1981, in a village near the foot of Makalu. He climbed the mountain the way other people commute to work. By the time of his death, he had summited Everest 19 times. He had climbed Lhotse twice, Manaslu 6 times, Annapurna Wars and IV, Cho OU K2. He was, by any standard the Himalayan database uses to measure these things, one of the most accomplished active high-altitude guides in the world. He is survived by his wife and 2 school-age children. His body lies above 7,500 meters on the southwest face of Makalu. 2 recovery attempts failed in the high winds of late January. Makalu Adventure has stated that a 3rd attempt will not be made. In the official statement closing the expedition, Mohan Lamsal said, his family will be able to visit him on the mountain. His home village is not far from Makalu. That sentence is one of the more honest things any commercial outfitter has said in 2026. It acknowledges what the financial reality has determined. Phurba Ongel will not be brought down. His widow and his children will, when the seasons allow, walk the trails toward base camp and look up at the peak that holds him. The mountain will be his grave. The asymmetry between what happened to Phurba Ongel and what happened to Gozali is not subtle. Phurba Ongel was the most experienced climber on the mountain that day. He was insured at the rates the Nepalese government requires for high-altitude porters and guides, rates that, after the 2014 Everest avalanche, were raised, and that the Sherpa community has continued to push to expand. His insurance will pay his family. The Sherpa community of the Khumbu and the Makalu region will, as it always does, absorb the rest. Gozali was the least experienced climber on the mountain. He was uninsured. He is missing. His family, when they are eventually reached, will receive nothing from the policy he carried. The cost of looking for him has fallen on the company that should not have had to pay it. That is not a moral judgment of either climber. It is a description of what the system produced. The honest closing argument is that the commercial mountaineering economy on Nepal's 8,000ers is structured around an assumption that is no longer reliable, that a paying client carries insurance that covers the work they are about to ask the local industry to do for them. Most clients do. Most policies hold. The system has worked, on average, for decades, but the cost of the assumption failing is not distributed evenly. When a Western client's insurance pays out, the system functions invisibly. When a client's insurance fails, the cost lands on the smallest, most exposed link in the chain, the local outfitter, and the financial damage can end the company. In late 2024, the Pakistani government raised the mandatory porter insurance on K2 by 10 times in response to the death of Mohammed Hassan. After the 2014 Khumbu icefall avalanche, Nepal raised the minimum compensation for working Sherpas. Both of those reforms made the industry slightly safer for the workers. Neither addressed the upstream question: what happens when a foreign client arrives without the coverage their participation depends on? Mohan Lamsal of Makalu Adventure has not said publicly whether his company will operate in 2027. He has said that the rescue cost was paid out of his own pocket. He has said the Iranian consulate could not help. He has said the search will not resume. The industry has, on its better days, adapted to the deaths of its workers. It has not yet adapted to the deaths of clients who arrive without the paperwork that pays for their disappearance. The next season is already booking. The next client may already be on the mountain. If this story stayed with you, the next Summit X investigation goes inside the global insurance economy of high-altitude climbing, the policies that pay, the policies that don't, and the gap between the two that is funded every season by the local outfitters Western coverage rarely names. Subscribe and ring the bell. The forensic breakdown is already in progress.